Rain slashed across the highway as a car died in the darkness, trapping a stranger in the storm. A single father stopped, fixed it with nothing but old tools and calloused hands, refused payment, just wanted to get home to his daughter. The next morning, he signed his termination papers in desperation. That's when the woman appeared at his door, carrying a truth that would flip his fate and unlock a future he'd stopped believing in. Who was she? And how did she know where he lived after just one night? Henry Carter lived in a world measured by what he couldn't afford. The rental house sat on the edge of town, small enough that Bonnie's laughter could reach every corner, worn enough that the landlord's notices seemed to arrive weekly. The kitchen table wobbled, the refrigerator hummed too loud. Taped to its door were reminders of everything pressing down on him, late rent notice in red ink. Bonnie's medical appointment schedule, school lunch payment slips. He was 37 years old and worked 2 jobs that still weren't enough. By day, he hauled boxes and fixed machinery at a warehouse, the kind of work that paid just enough to keep you trapped. By night, he took side jobs, fixing cars and driveways, cash under the table, enough to cover what the paycheck couldn't reach: medical bills, school supplies, the electricity bill that always seemed to climb. Henry didn't complain. Complaining was a luxury, like hope. He had rules instead. Work hard, keep your head down, help people when you can, never take money from someone stranded on the road, because that's just what you do. Bonnie Carter was 7 years old and understood more than any child should. She knew when to be quiet. She knew when Dad was calculating bills in his head, eyes distant, jaw tight. She'd learned to say she wasn't hungry when there was only one portion left. She'd learned to fold her homework neatly so it looked important, so Dad would smile when he saw it on the table. Their relationship was built on promises Henry fought to keep. "I'll be home for dinner. I'll make it to your recital. We'll be okay." Every time he ran late, every time he walked in exhausted, he saw the way she looked up from her homework, relieved. That look crushed him more than any landlord's threat. The night Bonnie fell asleep at the kitchen table, pencil still in hand, math worksheet half finished. Henry lifted her as gently as he could. She was getting heavier, growing up. He carried her to her room, tucked the blanket around her shoulders, and whispered an apology she couldn't hear. In his own room, Henry kept a locked box under the bed. Inside were things from before: technical drawings, a faded employee badge from a company that didn't exist anymore, a letter that had been crumpled and smoothed out too many times. When Bonnie asked about his old job, he always deflected. "Ancient history, kiddo. Some doors you closed because opening them hurt too much." The text message arrived at 11:43 at night. "Landlord, if rent isn't paid by tomorrow morning, I'm changing the locks." Henry read it 3 times. He had $217 in his account. Rent was $800. He opened his contacts, scrolled through names of people he could call, then closed the phone. There was no one. There never had been. That's when his phone buzzed again, a number he didn't recognize. "Car trouble near mile marker 87. Can you help?" Henry grabbed his tool bag and headed into the rain. Alexandra Reed wasn't supposed to be alone. CEOs of technology companies worth hundreds of millions didn't drive themselves on empty highways at midnight. They had drivers, security teams, assistants who managed every minute of their day. But Alexandra had dismissed all of them 6 hours ago. She needed to think. The company was hemorrhaging. A critical flaw in their new electric vehicle platform had surfaced. Something in the power management system that caused failures under specific conditions. Lawsuits were being drafted. The board was circling. Shareholders were demanding her resignation. She was 33 years old and about to lose everything she'd built. So she'd gotten in her car and driven, windows down, trying to outrun the pressure, trying to find the clarity that used to come naturally before the weight of expectation crushed it out of her. The car died 20 miles outside the city. No warning, just sudden silence and darkness. Alexandra sat in the driver's seat, hands still gripping the wheel. She reached for her phone to call her assistant, then stopped. The moment she made that call, her location would be tracked, questions would be asked. The board would know she'd cracked, that she'd run. She couldn't afford that weakness. The rain hammered the roof. The highway stretched empty in both directions, for the first time in years. Alexandra felt genuinely vulnerable. Not the calculated vulnerability she showed in negotiations, but the real kind. The kind that meant she might be making a terrible mistake just sitting here. Headlights appeared in the rearview mirror. A pickup truck, old but steady, slowing down. Alexandra's hand tightened on her phone. She prepared herself for the worst possible scenario, or maybe the most unexpected one. The rain came down harder as Henry pulled his truck behind the stalled vehicle. He grabbed his flashlight and tool bag, pulled his hood up, and approached. Through the driver's window, he could see a woman, rigid with tension, phone in her hand like a weapon. He knocked gently on the glass, stepped back to give her space. She cracked the window 2 inches. "I'm fine. You can go." "You're not fine," Henry said, calm as Sunday morning. "Sitting out here in the dark is dangerous. Let me take a quick look. 2 minutes. I don't need help from strangers. Then I'll stay a stranger who makes sure you get home safe." He held up his hands, showing the tools, the flashlight. "I fix cars, that's all this is." Something in his tone, or maybe the exhaustion, made Alexandra unlock the door. Henry didn't waste time. He asked her to try starting the engine, listen to the sound, or lack of it, not the battery, not the alternator. He popped the hood, shone his light across the engine bay. Modern vehicles were computers on wheels, but basic mechanical failures still followed old rules. He found it after 4 minutes. A loose connection in the power distribution. A relay that had vibrated free. Nothing catastrophic, just bad timing and bad weather. He pulled a small wrench from his bag, tightened the connection, cleaned the contact points with a rag. "Try it now." The engine turned over smooth and clean. Alexandra stared at the dashboard lights like they were a miracle. "It'll get you home," Henry said, closing the hood. "But take it to a real garage tomorrow. This is just a temporary fix. The relay housing might be cracked." Alexandra reached into her purse. "How much do I owe you?" "Nothing. That's not how this works. It works however we decide it works." Henry was already walking back to his truck. "Just get home safe. I need to get back to my daughter." Alexandra caught a glimpse of it then. In the brief moment, his phone screen lit up as he checked the time. A photo. His lock screen. A little girl, maybe 7, grinning at the camera, missing a front tooth. The moment stretched, rain between them. Henry waiting for her to drive first, making sure she was okay. Alexandra staring at this man who'd stopped in a storm and asked for nothing. As she pulled back onto the highway, she glanced in her mirror. His truck stayed put, hazard lights flashing, until she was out of sight. Only then did Alexandra notice his hands. They weren't the hands of a roadside mechanic. They moved with precision. Economy, the way someone worked when they'd been trained for something more. Morning came too fast and too cruel. Henry arrived at the warehouse 17 minutes late. Not his fault. The storm had washed out a section of road, forced a detour. He'd texted his supervisor, explained, asked for understanding. Clinton Marshall had never been interested in understanding. He was 42, manager of warehouse operations, and he ran his domain like a small tyrant. He had a talent for finding the weakest person in any room and pressing until they broke. Henry walked in to find Clinton waiting by the time clock, arms crossed, smile thin and sharp. "Carter, my office, now." The office was barely larger than a closet. Clinton sat behind his desk. Henry stood. That was the power dynamic Clinton preferred. "You're late. The storm closed Highway 47. I texted you." "I don't care about your excuses." Clinton slid a folder across the desk. "You've been late twice this month. You left early last week. Your productivity numbers are down." Every word was a lie, or close enough to one. Henry had been late once, 3 months ago, when Bonnie had a fever. He'd never left early. His productivity was higher than half the crew. But Clinton wasn't building a case based on truth. He was building one based on opportunity. "We're downsizing," Clinton said. "You're not a good fit anymore." The words hit like a fist to the gut. You're firing me! Terminating your employment, yes. You can sign this voluntary resignation form, or we can do this the hard way and you'll leave with nothing. Your choice. Henry looked at the paper. Voluntary resignation meant no unemployment benefits, no severance, nothing to cushion the fall while he searched for something else. But fighting Clinton would take time and money he didn't have, and he'd lose anyway. The system wasn't built for people like him. He thought about Bonnie, about the landlord's text, about the $217 that wouldn't cover anything. He signed, outside, in his truck. Henry sat with his hands on the wheel. They were shaking. He called home, forced his voice steady. Hey, kiddo, everything okay? Bonnie's voice, bright and innocent. Dad, when are you coming home? Soon, baby, real soon. The landlord's follow-up text arrived while he was still parked. You have until noon. Henry drove home in a fog. The math was simple and brutal. No job meant no rent. No rent meant eviction. Eviction meant losing Bonnie, because the court didn't let broke single fathers keep their kids in unstable housing. He'd fought too hard, survived too much, to let that happen. He pulled into his driveway and sat there, staring at the house. Maybe he could sell his tools. Maybe that would buy a week. Maybe. A car door closed behind him. Henry turned. Alexandra Reed stood at the edge of his driveway, and she looked nothing like the woman stranded in the rain. Her clothes were expensive. Her posture was power. But her eyes held something he recognized. Desperation, dressed up in designer labels. Bonnie appeared at the front door, curious. Dad, who's that? Henry climbed out of his truck slowly. Can I help you? I need to talk to you, Alexandra said. How did you find me? You left a business card in my glove box last night. Old habit, I assume. I called the number. When no one answered, I had someone track the address. She saw his expression. I know how that sounds. I'm not here to cause trouble. Henry crossed his arms. Then why are you here? Alexandra glanced at Bonnie, then back to Henry. Because I think you can help me, and I know I can help you. I don't need charity. This isn't charity. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. Last night, the way you diagnosed that problem, the precision in your movements, the way you handled that relay system that's not something you learn fixing cars and driveways. That's engineering-level expertise. Henry's jaw tightened. You don't know anything about me. I know enough to see when someone's operating below their skill level. She reached into her bag, pulled out a business card. My name is Alexandra Reed. I'm the CEO of Reed Mobility. We build electric vehicles, and we're in serious trouble. Henry took the card. Read it twice. CEO. The kind of title that came with offices in glass towers and decisions that moved millions of dollars. What does that have to do with me? Everything. Alexandra's voice carried an edge now, urgency cutting through. The way you fixed that electrical issue last night, that kind of systematic thinking is exactly what my company is missing. We have a critical failure in our power management system. We're facing lawsuits, bankruptcy, and I think you can see what my 100 engineers can't. That's insane. Is it, or is it the first piece of luck either of us has had in a long time? Henry shook his head. I'm a warehouse worker. I fix cars on the side. Whatever you think you saw last night, I saw someone who knows how systems fail. I saw someone who doesn't panic, who solves problems methodically, who understands the relationship between components most people miss. Alexandra's voice softened slightly. I'm not here to make you feel small. I'm here because I'm out of options, and I think you might be too. The silence stretched between them. Bonnie still watched from the doorway. The landlord's deadline was approaching noon. Even if I could help, Henry said quietly, I can't afford to take time away from finding real work. I have a daughter to feed. Rent I can't pay. I'm offering you a contract, 48 hours. Consulting fee paid up front, enough to cover your immediate needs. If you can identify the problem, there's more. A real position, a future. She paused. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to trust yourself. Henry looked back at his daughter, at the house that might not be his by tonight, at the tool bag in his truck that represented everything he'd been reduced to. Why would you trust me? You don't know me. I know you stopped in a storm to help a stranger. I know you refused money when you needed it. I know those hands." She pointed at them. "Those are the hands of someone who built things once. Someone who got pushed down and decided to survive instead of fight back." The words hit harder than Clinton's termination had. "I need to think about this." "You have until I walk back to my car," Alexandra said. It wasn't cruelty, it was honesty. "Because in 12 hours, my board meets to vote me out, and in however many hours you have, your landlord changes those locks. We don't have time for careful decisions anymore." Henry closed his eyes, breathed, opened them. "Okay." Alexandra nodded once. "Good. I'll have the contract and payment sent within the hour. My office is downtown. Can you be there by 3? "Yeah." She turned to leave, then stopped. "Henry, whatever happened to you before, whatever made you hide your skills, you need to put it aside for the next 2 days. I need the real you, not the version you've been playing to survive." She walked to her car. Henry watched her drive away, then he looked at Bonnie, still standing in the doorway, and tried to find words to explain what he didn't understand himself. But before he could, his phone buzzed, Clinton's number. The text was short and venomous. "Good luck finding work. I made sure everyone knows what kind of employee you really are." Henry stared at the message, and for the first time in years, he felt something other than resignation. He felt anger, clean and clarifying. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. The contract arrived by courier at 2:15. 3 pages, clear terms, a check for $5,000 paper-clipped to the front. Henry read it twice. Looking for traps. Found none. The money was real. The opportunity was real. The risk was all his. He deposited the check on his phone, paid the rent immediately, then called a neighbor to watch Bonnie for the afternoon. He put on his one good shirt, the one he saved for Bonnie's school events, and drove downtown. Reed Mobility occupied 6 floors of a steel and glass tower. The lobby was all clean lines and ambient lighting. Henry felt like an imposter the moment he walked in. Alexandra met him at the elevator. "You came. I said I would." The executive floor was a controlled chaos. People moved with purpose, voices tight with stress. Several employees glanced at Henry, then at Alexandra, confusion plain on their faces. Who was this guy? Alexandra led him to a conference room. "I need to be honest with you about something. This isn't just about fixing a technical problem. Someone inside this company is sabotaging us. I don't know who or why, but I know the failure isn't random. Someone wants us to collapse." Henry processed that. "So you brought in an outsider." "I brought in someone they don't know. Someone they can't manipulate or threaten. Someone who sees the problem fresh. Or someone you can blame if this doesn't work." Alexandra met his eyes. "I won't lie. If you fail, I'm done anyway. But if you succeed, you get credit and protection and a real shot at the career someone stole from you." "How do you know someone stole it?" "Because I spent the morning running background checks. You were a systems engineer at Dynatech Solutions 11 years ago. You were part of a major project. Then you vanished from the industry. No references, no job history in your field. People don't just walk away from careers like that. They get pushed." Henry's hands curled into fists. "That's none of your business." "It became my business when I bet my company on you." Her voice gentled. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to understand what I'm working with. And I think whatever happened to you is connected to what's happening now." Before Henry could respond, the conference room door opened. A man in his mid-40s stepped in. Expensive suit, calculating eyes. He looked at Henry like something tracked in on someone's shoe. "Alexandra, who is this?" "This is Henry Carter. He's consulting on the power management issue." The man's expression barely shifted. "Corbin Ashford, Chief Technology Officer. I wasn't informed we were bringing in outside consultants. Emergency decision. Board approved it this morning." A lie, smooth as silk. Henry caught it. So did Corbin. "I'd like to sit in on any analysis sessions," Corbin said. "For continuity." "That won't be necessary. Henry will work independently." Corbin's smile was thin. "Of course. I'll make sure he has access to whatever he needs." He looked at Henry. "Welcome to Reed Mobility. I hope you can accomplish what our entire engineering team couldn't." The door closed behind him. Henry turned to Alexandra. "He's the one sabotaging you." "I think so. I can't prove it. That's where you come in." "I'm not a detective. I'm an engineer." "Then engineer a solution. Find the proof in the data." Alexandra set him up in a private office with access to the company's technical systems. For the next 6 hours, Henry dove into code, schematics, test logs, failure reports. The problem was elegant in its cruelty. The power management system failed under a specific combination of conditions: cold weather, high humidity, rapid acceleration, and specific battery charge levels. Individually, each factor was manageable. Together, they created a cascading failure. But it wasn't random. Someone had introduced a subtle flaw in the control algorithm, something that wouldn't show up in normal testing. It was sophisticated, intentional, and it pointed back to an older design document, one authored years ago by someone who understood the system intimately. Henry pulled up the original file, saw the author's name, felt his blood go cold. His name, Henry Carter, from his time at Dynatech. Someone had taken his work, modified it, introduced the flaw, and implemented it at Reed Mobility. If the system failed, Henry would be the perfect scapegoat, the disgraced engineer who'd mysteriously left the industry. He was being framed. Again, Henry stood, paced the small office. His phone buzzed. Bonnie, calling to say goodnight. He stepped out to answer. "Hey, kiddo. Dad, when are you coming home?" "Tomorrow morning, I promise." "Okay, I love you." "I love you too, baby." He hung up, turned back toward the office, and found Corbin standing in the hallway. "Working late," Corbin observed. "Find anything interesting?" "Still analyzing." You know, it's fascinating. Alexandra brings in a random mechanic, and suddenly he has access to our most sensitive systems. Some might call that a security risk. Some might call it desperation." Corbin stepped closer. His voice dropped. "Let me be clear. Whatever Alexandra promised you, she can't deliver. She'll be gone by week's end, and when she is, you'll be escorted out by security. So if I were you, I'd take whatever money she gave you and disappear. Save yourself the embarrassment." Henry held his ground. "Why would you want me to leave if I'm just a random mechanic?" Corbin's expression flickered, just for a second. "I don't appreciate amateurs wasting our time." He walked away. Henry stood there, heart pounding, and understood. Corbin knew. He knew Henry wasn't just some roadside mechanic. He knew about Dynatech, about the stolen work. Maybe Corbin had been part of it. Henry went back inside the office, locked the door, and got to work proving it. By 3 a.m, Henry had traced the corruption. The modified algorithm had been introduced 6 months ago during a routine update. The update had been approved by Corbin. The code changes had been made by someone with elevated access, someone who could alter logs to hide their tracks. But there was one thing they couldn't hide. Every action in the system left a digital fingerprint. Buried deep in the backup servers, Henry found them, time-stamped entries showing unauthorized access, file modifications, log deletions. He compiled the evidence into a report, attached the original Dynatech documents showing his authorship, highlighted the specific changes that introduced the failure, built a case that any prosecutor could follow. He was about to send it to Alexandra when his screen went black. System access revoked. Henry tried to log back in. Denied. He checked his phone. 27 missed calls from Alexandra. Texts. "Get out. Now. Corbin knows. Security is coming." The office door rattled. Someone trying to open it. Henry grabbed the USB drive he'd been copying the evidence to, shoved it in his pocket, and moved to the window. 6th floor. No fire escape. The door rattled harder. Then his phone buzzed. "Alexandra, service elevator, end of the hall, I'm holding it." Henry unlocked the door, stepped out casually. 2 security guards were coming down the main hallway. He walked the other direction, trying not to run, reached the service elevator just as they shouted behind him. Alexandra pulled him inside, hit the button. The doors closed. What the hell happened? Corbin figured out I was close. He revoked my access, probably called security. Told them I was stealing corporate secrets. "Did you get the evidence?" Henry held up the USB drive. All of it. The elevator opened in the parking garage. Alexandra's car was running. Door open. They got in. She drove. Where are we going? Somewhere Corbin can't follow, somewhere I can make this count. They ended up at a 24-hour diner on the edge of town. Alexandra ordered coffee. Henry couldn't eat. They sat in a booth under fluorescent lights while the evidence sat between them on the USB drive. Tell me what you found, Alexandra said. Henry explained. The algorithm, the modifications, the authorship, the timeline that pointed directly at Corbin and whoever had helped him at Dynatech. He stole your work, Alexandra said slowly. Used it to build his career, then sabotaged it here to what cover his tracks, create value in the chaos. Both, probably. If Reed Mobility collapsed, he'd position himself as the guy who tried to save it. Move to a competitor with inside knowledge, make millions, while you take the fall for designing a flawed system. Again, Alexandra was quiet for a long moment. I need to ask you something. When you left Dynatech, what happened? Henry stared into his coffee cup. My wife got sick, cancer, needed full-time care. I took family leave. While I was gone, my project was shut down. They said it failed. They said I'd made critical errors. When I came back, I was fired, blacklisted. Couldn't get hired anywhere in the industry. My wife died 6 months later. I had Bonnie and no career and no references, so I took whatever work I could find. I'm sorry. I'm not telling you for sympathy. I'm telling you so you understand why I can't let Corbin get away with this. Alexandra nodded. Then we won't. They stayed in that diner until dawn, building a strategy. The board meeting was in 5 hours. Alexandra would present the evidence, expose Corbin, and save the company. But they needed more than data. They needed Corbin to incriminate himself. They needed him to believe he'd won. What if we make him think I'm running? Henry said. What if he thinks I'm scared enough to disappear, and you're desperate enough to make a deal? He'd gloat, he'd slip up. Maybe. Alexandra pulled out her phone, typed a message to Corbin. We need to talk, privately, before the board meeting. The response came immediately. My office, 7 a.m. They had 2 hours to prepare. At 6:45, Alexandra walked into Reed Mobility alone. Henry stayed in the car, watching through the building's glass walls. He could see Alexandra enter Corbin's office. The door closed. Inside, Alexandra played her role perfectly. I'm done fighting, she told Corbin. The evidence against Henry Carter is damning. He infiltrated our systems, corrupted our data, tried to frame you for his own failures. I'm prepared to go to the board with a full confession, admit I made a catastrophic hiring mistake, resign my position. In return, I need your word you won't pursue criminal charges. Corbin leaned back in his chair, victorious. That's a reasonable request. I need to know something first. Why did you do this? Why sabotage your own company? My company, Corbin laughed. Alexandra. This has never been about Reed Mobility. This is about reputation. When Dynatech collapsed, I made sure the blame landed on the right person. Henry Carter was brilliant, but he was weak. Caring for his dying wife while trying to maintain his career, he was the perfect fall guy. I took his designs, improved them, sold them as my own, built my career on his work. And when you came to Reed Mobility, I thought I'd left that ghost behind. Then you started digging into old Dynatech files for inspiration. And there it was. Carter's name, his original algorithms. Too close to what I'd been using. If anyone compared them, they'd see the theft. So I had to make those algorithms fail. Spectacularly, publicly, that way, if anyone ever looked. They'd see that Carter's work was fundamentally flawed. Problem solved. Except I hired him. A mistake I'm happy to correct. By tomorrow, Henry Carter will be in police custody, and you'll be gone. I'll be interim CEO, and Reed Mobility will stabilize under my leadership. Everyone wins. Except Henry. He stopped mattering years ago. Alexandra stood. Thank you for your honesty, Corbin. She walked out, leaving him confused. 2 minutes later, security entered his office with police. The entire conversation had been recorded, transmitted live to the board's private channel. Every word, every admission. Corbin Ashford was arrested before the board meeting even started. Henry watched from his parking lot as police led Corbin out in handcuffs. Alexandra emerged 20 minutes later, found him sitting on the hood of his truck. "It's over," she said. "Just like that. Just like that. The board saw everything, your evidence, his confession. They're voting to reinstate you at Dynatech with full back pay and benefits. They're also offering you a senior engineering position here." Henry couldn't process it. Why would Dynatech do that? "Because I made it a condition of Reed Mobility not suing them for enabling Corbin's theft. They either make it right, or we go public with everything." "And Reed Mobility?" Alexandra smiled, tired but genuine. "Survives, thanks to you." They stood there in the parking lot as the sun climbed higher. Henry thought about Bonnie, waiting at home, about the rent that was paid, about the job he'd just been offered, about the 11 years he'd spent in survival mode. "I should go home," he said. "Bonnie's probably worried." "Henry," Alexandra caught his arm. "I need to know. Are you taking the job?" He thought about it, about walking back into the industry that had destroyed him, about trusting that this time would be different. "On one condition," he said. "I work on my terms. I don't hide who I am, and if someone tries to push me down again, I push back." "Deal." They shook hands. Henry drove home, called Bonnie from the road, told her to get ready for breakfast at her favorite diner. When he pulled up, she ran out before he even stopped the truck. "Dad, you came back. I promised, didn't I?" "Over pancakes." Bonnie asked the question he'd been waiting for. "What happened at your job?" Henry considered how to explain it, settled on the truth. "Someone tried to steal my work. Someone else helped me prove it. And now things are going to be different." "Good different." "Yeah, kiddo, good different." 3 months later, Henry walked into Reed Mobility as Director of Systems Engineering. He had his own team, his own projects, his name on patents that couldn't be stolen. Bonnie had new shoes that fit. They'd moved to a bigger apartment with windows that caught morning light. The medical bills were paid. The future didn't feel like something to survive anymore. Alexandra met him for coffee once a week, ostensibly to discuss projects, actually to talk about everything else, about being single parents, about building something real from something broken, about learning to trust again. One evening, they had dinner at Henry's apartment. Bonnie set the table, chattered about her day, drew pictures of the three of them when she went to bed. Henry and Alexandra sat on the couch, coffee cooling in their hands. "Do you ever think about that night?" Henry asked. "The rain, the highway." "Every day." "Why did you really come looking for me?" "The company crisis is one reason, but there's another." Alexandra was quiet for a moment. "Because when you fixed my car, you didn't see a CEO. You saw someone who needed help, and you helped without asking for anything. I'd forgotten people like that existed." She looked at him. "I'd forgotten I wanted to be that kind of person." "You are. I'm learning to be. You're teaching me." Henry shook his head. "That night, I was just trying to get home to Bonnie." "I know. That's what made it matter." Alexandra smiled. "You fixed my car in the rain, but you fixed something bigger too. You reminded me why I started building things in the first place. Not for money or power, for people. And you gave me my life back. We gave each other a chance." She stood, prepared to leave, at the door. She turned back. "Next week, Bonnie's school has a science fair. She told me she's building an electric car model. I thought maybe I could help." "She'd love that. And after maybe dinner, the three of us." "Yeah, I'd like that." Alexandra left. Henry stood at the window, watching her car pull away. Behind him, Bonnie's voice drifted from her room. "Dad, is Miss Alexandra going to come around more?" "I think so, kiddo." "Good, I like her." "Me too." The city lights spread out below. Somewhere in the distance, a storm was rolling in. But Henry wasn't afraid of storms anymore. He'd learned something in the rain that night. Sometimes you stop to help a stranger. Sometimes that stranger changes your life. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that change becomes forever. The night he'd repaired Alexandra's car, he'd been a man trying to survive. Now he was a man learning to live again. The difference was everything. It was family dinners and career prospects and Bonnie's laughter echoing through a home that was truly theirs. It was Alexandra's texts checking in, making sure they were okay, slowly becoming someone they needed. It was the quiet knowledge that kindness wasn't weakness, that helping someone in the dark could lead to light. That sometimes, the person you save is the one who ends up saving you right back. Henry Carter had stopped on a rainy highway to fix a stranger's car, asked for nothing, expected nothing, and in return, that stranger had given him something he'd stopped believing existed. A second chance, a real one, the kind that doesn't come from luck or pity, but from two people who saw each other's worth when the rest of the world had looked away. She changed his life forever, but the truth was deeper than that. They'd changed each other, and in doing so, they'd built something neither could have built alone. Something worth believing in, something worth protecting, something like hope.